and meant to be is a very special Remembrance Day presentation coming up on Sunday, November 10th. With details, we are joined right now by author and presenter Roslyn Franken. Good to have you here.
It's good to be here.
It's your third book?
It is, yes.
My goodness. Okay. Yeah, you're the best-selling author of The A-List and Death Can Wait. Cancer survivor as well. My goodness, you're very inspirational. I know you've got quite the story here to tell. What's going to be happening in Stittsville November 10th?
I'm very excited about this presentation on November 10th. It is in honor of Remembrance Day. I'm going to be sharing highlights from this book that I wrote, and because my father, when he passed away, he was the last Canadian POW Nagasaki atomic bomb survivor. It seemed appropriate to share his story on Remembrance Day, but also my mother survived the concentration camps in Nazi Europe, so you have both sides of the war, so how perfect for Remembrance Day.
Well, why did you decide to write this book, to get those stories out?
You know, as I was growing up, this was my parents' story. I didn't think anything of it. It's your parents, right? When you're a kid, you don't really understand or appreciate it. But people would always ask me, wait a second, your mother survived the concentration camps. She was in Europe. Your father was in Japan. Wait a sec, like how did they survive? How did they meet? How did they end up in Montreal? That's where I grew up. How did they end up being such positive, inspiring people after all the pain, loss, and suffering they went through? And I thought, you know what, this is a pretty amazing story. And I thought, I need to share it.
You had to get it out on paper here.
Yes.
Yeah. Clearly, there's lots of miracles going on in here. Maybe you could highlight one of the miracles that you've written about?
There's so many, but one of them, for example, my father, 3 months before the bomb was dropped on Nagasaki, he volunteered to work in the coal mines. Why? Because in the coal mines you get to be bathed every day as opposed to maybe once every 10 days while working in the shipyards where he was before. Well, where was my father when the bomb fell on Nagasaki? He was hundreds of meters underground. It saved his life.
Wow. Wow.
I know.
It's something.
I wouldn't be sitting here right now, right? if
really
that
is
didn't
something.
happen.
When you think about that, yeah, that's definitely for certain when you say that, right? You wouldn't be here today without these miracles that you've written about. When you do this multimedia presentation coming up on the 10th, I mean, who is it geared toward, the presentation? On
the 10th, it's really for anybody and everybody who wants to come and pay respects for the veterans and just in honor of Remembrance Day and to hear this incredible story.
Okay. You actually did a speech. You spoke in front of it must have been emotional for you to be at this school in the States. Where were you?
I spoke to the class that was shot into by the gunman at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. I was the first person they had come from the outside to come into the school to actually talk to the students, and the class was the history of the Holocaust class. That's what they were studying, and I spoke there on Holocaust Remembrance Day to speak to these students and give them hope and inspire them. How did they react? Well, when the first kid came up and gave me a great big hug and crying, and I'm crying, that gave me a real indication. They just said it really gave them hope to hear about my parents who went through such tragedy for years on end, and that they were able to move on with their life and put their life back together and have a positive, meaningful life, gave them hope that, hey, maybe they too can be able to move forward, because that's the biggest obstacle for these kids. Now, you mentioned to me that you've spoken in front of crowds of 10 people, in crowds of up to 900 people. Yes.
It doesn't really matter. You just have this passion, a purpose to get your story out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Of course, speaking to a room of 900 students, young people who were totally into the story, I can't even tell you how rewarding and meaningful that is. Is it important to you? I read that you were called the master storyteller, and without it sounding like ego, or I know that you're humble, but to get these stories out, that's got to mean something to you. It means a lot because a master storyteller, just being able to reach people, touch people, engage them, and them feel connected to the story and connected to me as I'm telling the story. That means a lot because it's such an emotional story. What time does this all get underway on the 10th? 7 o'clock. Okay, and it's happening out in Stittsville? Stittsville United Church, 7 o'clock. Just show up, and I'm going to be doing a book signing after as well. Amazing. And I know you're available for speaking as well in the Capital Region. Roslyn Franken, thank you very much for being here. There's the book right there, roslynfranken.com. For more details, it's called Meant to Be. And thank you very much for being here today. My name is Dylan Black. Have a great day.